Hi, David Williams, Billionaire Boy. We've got up to chapter 6.
The groups.
But I'm actually going to read chapters 6 and 7 to you today.
Wow.
Elliot, you're going to start us off again, aren't you? But before you start, some new vocabulary. Luxuriating, which is where you're enjoying something in a delightful way. Deposited is when you put something down somewhere. Massacred means to destroy. And wielding is when you're holding something ready to use it.
I'm holding.
Like you might say you're wielding a sword.
I'm wielding a book.
You're wielding a book. Okay then. Right.
Chapter 6, the grubs. Oi, Blob! Came a shout from behind them. Just keep walking, said Bob. Joe turned to look around and glimpsed a pair of twins. They looked terrifying, like gorillas in human suits. They must be the dreading grubs Bob had talked about. Don't look around, said Bob. I'm serious, just keep walking. Joe was beginning to wish he had the luxuriating.
He was luxuriating.
In the safety of the back seat of his chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce rather than walking to the bus stop.
Why would he rather be in his chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce than there?
Because then he's got someone like an adult to look after him.
Yeah, because the grubs are coming.
Yeah, grubs.
Fatso! As Joe and Bob walked faster, they could hear footsteps behind them. Although it was still early, the winter sky was blackening. The street lamps flickered on, and blotches of yellow light spilled onto the wet ground. Quick, let's run down here, said Bob. The boys dashed down an alley and hid behind a giant green wheelie bin that was parked at the back of Bella Pasta. I think we've lost them, whispered Bob. Are those the grubs? Asked Joe. Shh, keep your voice down. Sorry, whispered Joe. Yeah, it's the grubs. The ones who bully you. That's them. They're identical twins. Dave and Sue Grubb. Sue? So one of them's a girl? Joe could swear that when he'd turned around and seen the twins following them, both of them had thick facial hair. Sue's a girl, yes, said Bob, as if Joe was some kind of idiot. Then they can't be identical, whispered Joe. I mean, if one's a boy and one's a girl. Well, yeah, but no one can tell them apart. Suddenly, Joe and Bob heard footsteps coming closer and closer. I can smell fat boys, came a voice from the other side of the bin. The grubs wheeled the bin away to reveal the two boys crouching behind it. Joe took his first good look at the pair. Bob was right. The grubs were identical. They both had matching crew cuts, hairy knuckles, and moustaches, all of which seemed unfortunate for both of them. Let's play Spot the Difference with the grubs. Can you spot 10 differences? I'll give you 10 seconds. Did you spot them? No, because you can't. They're exactly the same. A gust of cold wind hummed through the alley. An empty can trundled past on the ground. Something twitched in the bushes. How was the cross-country run without your kit today, Blob? Chuckled one grub. I knew that was you two, Bob replied angrily. So what did you do with it? It's in the canal, chuckled the other. Now give us your chocolate. Even hearing their voices didn't give any clues as to who was Dave and who was Sue. Both their voices wavered high and low in one sentence. Yes. Ask your dad. I'm taking some home for my mum, protested Bob. I don't care, said the other grub. Give us it, you little, said the other one. Now I have to confess, reader, that the bit was a swear word. Other swear words include, and of course, the incredibly rude. If you don't know any swear words, it's best to ask a parent or teacher or other responsible adult to make a list for you. For example, here are some of the rude words I know. Please don't ask me for any swear words, okay, or rude words. But David Williams here has listed loads of crazy words that don't make any sense at all. They're like alien words that you learn when you're in year 1. Oh, and there's more. Please don't do that, Elliot, when I'm reading. All of those words are so rude, I wouldn't dream of putting them in this book. Don't pick on him, said Joe. Then he instantly regretted drawing attention to himself again as the grubs took a step towards him. Oh, what? Said either Dave or Sue, their breath toxic from a bag of skips they had recently snatched from a little girl in year 5. Oh, Joe searched his mind for something to say that would crush these bullies forever. Oh, I'll be very disappointed in you both. That wasn't it. The grubs laughed. They snatched what was left of the Cadbury's Dairy Milk bar from Bob's hand and then grabbed his arms. They lifted him up. As Bob yelled for help, they deposited him in the wheelie bin. Before Joe could say anything else, the grubs were stomping off down the road, laughing, with their mouths full of stolen chocolate.
Naughty.
Very naughty. Horrible. Which one do you think, Sue?
I naughty, Sue, I think.
Joe dragged a wooden crate over, then stood on it to give himself more height. He leaned down into the bin and caught hold of Bob under the armpits. With a great heave, he started to pull his heavy friend out of the bin. Are you okay? He asked as he strained to take Bob's weight. Oh yeah, they do this to me most days, said Bob. He pulled some spaghetti and Parmesan cheese out of his curly hair. Some of it had been there since the last time the Grub twins deposited him in a bin. Well, why don't you tell your mum? Oh, I don't want to make her worry about me. She's got enough to worry about already, replied Bob. Maybe you should tell a teacher then. Oh, the Grubs said if I ever told anyone that they would really beat me up. They know where I live, and even if they got expelled, they could still find me, said Bob. He looked like he was about to cry. Joe didn't like to see his new friend upset. One day, I'll get them back. I will. My dad always used to say the best way to beat bullies is to stand up to them. One day, I will. Joe looked at his new friend, standing there in his underwear, covered in scraps of Italian food. He thought of Bob standing up to the Grubs. The fat boy would get massacred. But maybe there's another way, he thought. Maybe I can get the Grubs off his back forever. He smiled. He still felt bad about paying Bob to come last in the race. Now he could make up for it. If his plan worked, he and Bob were going to be more than just friends. They'd be best friends.
Dun, dun, dun.
Good.
Right, this is not one chapter.
Chapter 7. Gerbils on toast.
Gerbils on toast.
I bought you something, said Joe. He and Bob were sitting on the bench in the playground watching the more agile kids play football. Just because you're a billionaire doesn't mean you have to buy me anything, said Bob. I know, but... Joe brought a large bar of dairy milk out of his bag. Bob's eyes couldn't help but light up a little. We can share it, said Joe before snapping off a tiny square of chocolate, then breaking that tiny square in half. Bob's face fell. I'm only joking, said Joe. Here. He handed Bob the bar to help himself. Oh no, said Bob. What? Bob pointed. The Grubs were walking slowly across the playground towards them, right through the games of football. Not that anyone dared to complain. Quick, let's make a run for it, said Bob. Where? The dining room. They wouldn't dare go in there. No one does. Why? Oh, you'll see. When they burst into the dining room, it was completely empty, aside from a lone dinner lady. The Grubs burst in a few paces behind them. Their genders still uncertain. If you aren't eating, get out, shouted Mrs. Trafe. But Mrs. Trafe, said either Dave or Sue. I said, out. The twins reluctantly retreated as Joe and Bob tentatively made their way to the serving counter. Mrs. Trafe was a large, smiley soul of a dinner lady age. Bob had explained on the way to the canteen that she was nice enough, but her food was truly revolting.
She sticks a finger in it.
The kids in the school would rather die than eat anything she cooked. In fact, they probably would die if they ate anything she cooked. Who's that then? Said Mrs. Trafe, peering at Joe. This is my friend Joe, said Bob. Despite the vile smell in the canteen, Joe felt warmth spread through him. No one had ever called him their friend before. "Now, what would you boys like today?" Mrs. Trafe said with a warm smile. "I have a very nice badger and onion pie, some deep-fried rust, or for the vegetarians, I have jacket potatoes with sock cheese." It all looks so nice," said Bob, lying, as the grubs stared in at them through the grimy windows. Mrs. Trafe's cooking was truly unspeakable. A typical week's menu for the school canteen looked like this. So here are some examples. We've got gerbils on toast.
Yep.
We've got macaroni snot. We've got toenail ice cream. Yummy. We've got dandruff risotto. We've got char-grilled kitten. Not good. Squirrel dropping tart with cream or ice cream. There's also wet wipe tandoori.
Yuck.
Newt vindaloo.
Yuck.
Pan-fried otter steaks.
Yuck.
Mouse mousse.
Yuck.
All sound terrible, don't they? It's so hard to choose, said Bob, desperately scouring the trays of food for something edible. I think we'll just have 2 jacket potatoes, please. Is there any chance I could have it without the sock cheese? Pleaded Joe. Bob looked hopefully at Mrs. Trafe. I could sprinkle on some earwax shavings if you prefer, or a showering of dandruff, offered Mrs. Trafe with a smile. I think I'll just have it totally plain, please, said Joe. Some boiled mould on the side, perhaps? You're growing, boys, offered Mrs. Trafe, wielding a serving spoon of something green and unspeakable. I'm on a diet, Mrs. Trafe, said Joe. Me too, said Bob. That's a shame, boys, said the dinner lady dolefully. I have a smashing dessert on today. Jellyfish and custard. That's my absolute favourite too, said Joe. Never mind. He took his tray to one of the empty tables and sat down. As he put his knife and fork into the potato, he realised that Mrs. Trafe had forgotten to cook it. How are your spuds? Called Mrs. Trafe across the hall. Delicious, thank you, Mrs. Trafe, Joe called back as he pushed his raw potato around the plate. It was still covered in soil, and he noticed a maggot burrowing out of it. I hate it when they're too well done. This is perfect. Good, she said. Bob was trying to chew his, but it was so utterly inedible, he started crying. Something the matter, boy? Called Mrs. Trafe. Oh, no, it's so delicious that these are tears of joy, said Bob. Ding!
Dong.
Once again, that wasn't your doorbell, reader. That was the bell to signal the end of lunch. Joe let out a sigh of relief. Phew! Dinner hour was over. Oh, what a shame, Mrs. Trafe, said Joe. We've got to go to maths lesson now. Mrs. Trafe limped over and inspected their plates. You've hardly touched them, she said. Oh, sorry, it was so filling and really, really tasty, said Joe.
Not.
Seconded Bob, still crying. Well, it doesn't matter. I can put them in the fridge for you and you can finish them off tomorrow. Joe and Bob shared a horrified look. Really, I don't want you to go to any trouble, said Joe. No trouble at all. I'll see you then. And I've got some specials tomorrow. It's the anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, so it's Japanese Day. I'm doing my armpit hair sushi, followed by tadpole tempura. Boys? Boys? I think the grubs have gone, said Bob as they sneaked out of the canteen. I've just got to use the bog. I'll wait for you, said Joe. He leaned against the wall as Bob disappeared through a door. Usually, Joe would have said that the lavatories were smelly, and he'd have been horrified to have to use them after the privacy of his own en-suite bathroom with emperor-sized bath. But the truth was that the toilets didn't smell as bad as the canteen. Suddenly, Joe sensed 2 figures looming behind him. He didn't need to turn around. He knew it was the
grubs.
Where is he? Said one. He's in the boys' loo, but you can't go in there, said Joe. Well, Not both of you, anyway. Where's the chocolate bar? Asked the other. Bob's got it, said Joe. Well, we'll wait for him then, said the grub. The other grub turned to Joe, a deadly look in its eye. Now give us £1, unless you want a dead arm, that is. Joe gulped. Actually, I'm glad I bumped into you two guys. Well, guy and a girl, obviously. Obviously, said Dave or Sue. Give us £1. Wait, said Joe, it's just, I wondered if... Give him a dead arm, Sue, said a grub, revealing for perhaps the first time which of the twins was male and which was female. But then the grubs grabbed Joe and spun him around, and he lost track again. No, wait, said Joe. The thing is, I want to make you two an offer. I wonder what that offer could be. See if you can make a prediction about what you think that offer could be. Also, there was a disgusting menu there. I want you to come up with an even more repulsive school menu. So I'd like you to design one day of really rotten food.
I'm going to play you a song.
Quickly. This is not the Elliot Show. There we go. I'll see you tomorrow, guys.